conflict with reports of ethnic killings. Well, here at the Sundance Film Festival in Park City, Utah, a new documentary shows how South Sudan has become ground zero for contemporary colonialism in Africa. Director Hubert Sauper's We Come as Friends provides an aerial view of the conflict in Sudan from a shaky, handmade two-seater plane. The film depicts American investors, Chinese oilmen, United Nations officials, and Christian missionaries struggling to shape Sudan according to their own visions, while simultaneously applauding the alleged independence of the world's newest state. What emerges is a devastating critique of the consequences of cultural and economic imperialism. In this clip from the film, we hear an English businessman address an investors' conference in the capital Juba, followed by news reports about the newly formed nation of South Sudan.
I would hope that people would embrace is the philosophy that Native Americans have. Nobody owns any of this. We just borrow it for our lifespan. Yeah. And we should give it back in a better condition than we got it in. So if people view South Sudan in that way, then it will be right for the South Sudanese and it will be right for the investors because it's completely win-win.
There are great concerns, you know, aerial bombardments near the border areas are going on, as well as in Darfur, in North.
The world's newest nation is preparing for war. Thousands of soldiers are already on the new border. This is over oil and land.
That's a clip from Hubert Sauper's new documentary, We Come as Friends. It just premiered here at the Sundance Film Festival. For more, we're joined by Hubert Sauper. His 2004 film, Darwin's Nightmare, was nominated for an Academy Award. We Come as Friends will have its European premiere at the Berlin Film Festival next month. Hubert Sauper, welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. It's a fascinating film. Can you relate the film to what's happening today in South Sudan?
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Thanks for having me. Yes, obviously as a documentary filmmaker, you work for years. I worked for 6 years in this film, and I'm not a newscast person, but I finished making We Come as Friends in 2012, and the last episode of my film happened at the moment when the new formed state South Sudan transgressed the new formed border to its neighbor North Sudan and attacked an oil field, and the North Sudan in exchange bombed villages in the South Sudan, and there was a big fight over an oil field called Heglig, which you can see in the movie. And now, let's say 2 years on, the conflict has similar forms, but is called, let's say, not a religious conflict, because when I shot the film 2 years ago, until then it was officially a conflict between Muslims and Christians fighting over oil, to simplify a very complicated story, of course. And now the Muslims are contained in another country, the North Sudan. Mr. Bashir is a war criminal and quite known in the world. I think he's a known name for being not a very tender president. But now the South Sudan is no longer fighting between the religious lines, and suddenly it becomes ethnic lines, and suddenly newer tribes fight against Dinka tribes and two warlords who basically try to figure out who is going to strike the deals with oil companies. So it's the same thing. It's a divided country, and at stake is the same thing again. It's the oil and the water for the Nile and the gold, whatever.
And talk about the larger forces at play.
Well, We Come as Friends is a movie that depicts the pathology of colonialism, basically. And it's very complicated and hundreds of years old or thousands of years old pathology. And were you going to say, should I talk about the movie? Or
yeah, I mean, which is exactly what you deal with in the movie, is these larger forces at play. In fact, let me play a clip from the film, talking about these larger forces. The U.S. ambassador to South Sudan, Barry Walkley, speaking at the opening of a new power plant in Kapueta near the Kenyan border. At one point, his address is interrupted by a protester.
The people of the United States of America, I'm delighted to congratulate the organizers of this timely event. The Capoeira power plant can today serve approximately 725 customers through 20 kilometers of completed electric lines. In the future, we'll be able to serve Local community members provided much of the labor required to build this plant. Their sweat and dedication.
Get him out.
The electricity that flows throughout the This morning, in the remarks, there have been several references to light. During the opening prayer, Reverend Father talks about light. The County Commissioner, in his remarks, also spoke of the importance of light. The children sang songs of light. Those remarks, those references to light, were literally and figuratively appropriate, because today we are literally and figuratively bringing light.
The U.S. ambassador to South Sudan, Barry Walkley, speaking at the opening of a new power plant in Capoeira near the Kenyan border, saying we literally and figuratively are bringing light. Hubert Sauper.
Well, that is a very known old phrase. It's basically, it came out of the mouth of this ambassador. I think he's well-meaning, I'm sure. The movie is about the mindset of a problem, which is very, very old in human history. Is outside forces coming to a place. In this case, it's South Sudan, the very place where you just saw this opening of a power plant, making electricity for the locals. Is the place where most of the gold resources of this new country are under the ground. Nobody really talks about it, but I think when you want to extract gold, you need a lot of electricity, and I presume there is a connection between this new power plant and the future gold exploitation. Also, you need a lot of fresh water for gold, and there's also fresh water in this place in Capoeira. Whatever. For me, it was amazing as a filmmaker to come to a place like South Sudan, to emerge into like a window of history, the window of history, because one of the main consequences of colonialism is the division to rule, divide and rule. And most people know that Africa was cut into 50 or what pieces 100 years ago, and now it is basically in 2011 Sudan was cut in 2 more pieces. Everyone was basically applauding this new situation because we have 2 new countries and it's going to be peace, but not many people talked about the new border, which is thousands of kilometers long, and on the borders in Africa people die. And unfortunately this new border between North and South Sudan cuts straight through the oil fields, which is the scene of the end of this movie, which you may not have time to see, but it's a terrifying end. It's a war in the oil fields.
Well, I want to go back to another clip, Hubert, of your film, We Come as Friends, a tribal leader in South Sudan coming to understand that he's leased about 2,300 square miles of community land to a Dallas-based company called the Nile Trading and Development Corporation, or NTD. The contract's explained to him by a group of political activists from Juba.
NTD has full rights to exploit all natural resources in the leased land. This includes 1. Right to develop, produce, and exploit timber, forestry, resources on the leased land.
It is written that they will cut the trees on your land.
Right to engage in agricultural activities, the cultivations of biofuel crops and palm oil trees. 4. Right to explore, develop, mine, produce, and or exploit petroleum, natural gas, and other hydrocarbons resources for both local and export markets for 75,000 Sudanese pounds, equivalent to approximately US$25,000.
That's a clip from We Come as Friends. The amount of land that was sold, the 2,300 square miles, is approximately the equivalent of greater metropolitan Chicago. Hubert Sauper. How did this happen?
I cannot tell you how it happened. I can just tell you that it's a fantastic thing as a filmmaker to experience, and say fantastic in a bit of a sarcastic meaning, to experience things from history which we know. One of the things that in colonial history in Africa was that Mr. Stanley went for the Belgian king into the Congo and made tribal chiefs sign contracts to give up their land, and suddenly, as a filmmaker, 100 years later, we end up experiencing live and firsthand the same situation again, and it is literally it is jaw-dropping as a filmmaker. I'm holding a very small camera and I'm seeing things that happen which are historic in a way, but symbolically historic. So it's an amazing experience as a filmmaker, and I'm transposing this experience into cinema art, and now it's shown in Sundance. In
a moment, I want to talk about how you've spent this last 6 years making this film, and the plane that you built to travel from France to Sudan. But first, another of the forces at play in We Come as Friends depicted there and are the missionaries. Here, an evangelist from Oklahoma is preaching to a group of students in his missionary school in the small town of Kapueta in South Sudan near the Kenyan border.
I want to tell you all that I am very proud of you. We need leaders who are young men and women of God. Who trust in God and know that He will answer your prayers. When what I want is what God wants, that means when I pray, I'm praying just like Jesus prayed. So that you believe that whatever you pray for, God will do. But you know what the first requirement is for God to answer your prayers? First, you must allow Him to change your heart. My heart has to change.
The missionaries, Hubert Sauper.
The missionaries, well, you know, I worked for 6 years on We Come as Friends, and we met a lot of friends on the way. And we used a small home-built airplane, as you said, which we built with the film crew. Built a small airplane, which is metaphorically a spaceship, and we are kind of aliens in this environment, and we meet aliens to us also. And some of the aliens we met, I'm quoting aliens, are Chinese oil workers who are living in a closed environment, who have air-conditioned containers, bulletproof dining rooms, and who are surrounded by local people who never speak to those Chinese people. You know, some of the people we met were evangelists, as you just showed, I think, in your clip. They have their ideas of the world, and they bring the word of Jesus, and they bring light, and they bring hygiene and order. I think order is a very important thing. It's a very, very, very important aspect of colonialism, is to bring order into chaos, and to make people march in step, and to make people wear uniforms. And that's one of the things you need to do before you put children into uniforms, is you give them T-shirts, and you need to make them wear clothes. You know, people who are running around free and naked, you cannot use as soldiers, for example. And so forth. I think what the movie We Come as Friends is trying to describe is not a judgment to let's say missionaries. They are actually very sympathetic and good-meaning people, and they took us in very nicely. And I was basically just documenting what the camera sees. It's just it's a very casual thing that people bring the words of God and the Bible, and it's just the collection of all these things. Let's say, if you see it from the perspective of local people in South Sudan, there is Arabs coming with the Quran. There's Christians coming with the Bible. There's Chinese coming with to get oil. The UN is dropping food on poor people. The government of North Sudan are dropping bombs on the same people. And all of this, one of the reasons why I used an airplane to make these movies, that a lot of symbolisms kind of coincide in
So talk about this plane that you built. I mean, it's just astonishing.
Yeah, sorry, we don't have time to be in the cockpit, but it's I was flying it with my great.
What was the engine you used?
Yeah, I was going to say the more important engine were my friends who came with me. Barney Broomfield is a young filmmaker from America. He is so talented, and he was learning how to fly over the war zone with me, and he knew obviously already how to film. He made amazing shots, and I was filming myself. We used this little airplane as a means of transport to go into places where we weren't necessarily invited, in Chinese oil fields or military camps. We literally and figuratively dropped from the sky. Sometimes we really dropped from the sky. Sometimes we just said we had to land because we didn't have fuel anymore, and the people took us in, and we made friends with the locals or the military leaders. We had uniforms to get along better with the military. So we became ourselves. We looked like idiots in uniforms.
You looked like pilots.
We looked like we were pilots, but we were pilots in a flying tin can, and we walked out as you know, first officers and commanders, and then we were saluted by the military, and we were like linking up. And just to finish that, the airplane itself is a symbol of domination, of superiority of let's say Europeans over Africa over the centuries. It's a phallic machine. It's white. It comes down onto the black continent. It's an evil machine. It drops bombs. It's a machine that's connected to religious symbolisms. You know, the UN has these beautiful white birds who bring all these doctors and help. So an airplane contains within itself a number of symbolisms which are, of course, used in this kind of films. In this film, We Come as Friends. Yeah.
Well, it's a remarkable film, and I hope we have another conversation when it opens in theaters. The film has just premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. Hubert Sauper is the director. It's called We Come as Friends. It is just premiered here, and will have its European premiere at the Berlin Film Festival next month. His 2004 film, Darwin's Nightmare, was nominated for an Academy Award. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. When we come back, we go to Bahrain. Stay with us.